For coming out and letting us share our project with you tonight. I did get some questions and concerns early, so that's good. But the one thing I can say is that everybody, no matter what side you're on, you really care about your community and want your input heard. So we appreciate you letting us come here and have a question and answer. So my name is Shaylin. I am the Executive Director of Snowbelt Housing Company, and I'm here with Maureen and Shane. Maureen's from TLS and Shane is from Credo, and we're working together on this project to make it sustainable. So tonight we're going to do a short presentation on sort of what does the homeless population look like in Lewis County, and then we're going to do a question and answer discussion. Sorry. Need a second, that is a lot of faces. So during the question and answer session, what we're going to try and do is get to as many questions as possible and try to keep the questions down to a couple minutes so that we can get to as many people as we can. If anyone has questions but don't want to be on camera, they can write their questions down, put them on the corner over there, and Jeremy will run them up to us so that we can kind of group them together or see if any are duplicated, because it sounds like a lot of the questions or comments are kind of overlapped. So hopefully we can get to as many as possible. I also want to mention that in order to make this work, we all have to respect each other's opinions, regardless of which side it's on. So if it does get out of control, then we're just going to shut the meeting down and we'll work to address concerns individually. Okay. Well, with all the rules out of the way. So why are we even considering a supportive housing project in Lewis County? In 2022, Snowbelt served 127 households that were from Lewis County. We serve them by finding them permanent housing services and preventing homelessness or getting them off the street from being homeless. The individuals that came into our agency came because some were veterans, some had a recent job loss, some had a house fire, some had a car that broke down that just put them behind on rent, some had a recent life-changing event such as stroke, chronic illness. We had one parent that had to take off of work in order to take care of their sick child. There was divorce or other loss of a primary source of income, car accidents, and some were aging out of foster care or were young adults that didn't have their primary parent for many reasons. Some were death, illness, but they weren't able to take care of them. A wise person once told me that any person who's not independently wealthy is just one disaster away from becoming homeless. For instance, we have 3 seniors that we worked with last year that worked their whole life on a small farm. They ended up losing their business and found themselves in a tough spot. I only mention this because I've heard a few times that people should just live with their family. And it's unfortunate, but not everyone has family to go to. So if you take a look at the first sheet that I handed out, the characteristics of the people that we assisted last year, I just want to mention that 100% of these people were residents of Lewis County or had direct ties to Lewis County. I say that because Natural Bridge is on the line, but they were working full-time in the county, in the county. If you total all the numbers in this section, you'll notice that 325 is a lot larger than 127 people that we serve. So how does that work? There's 42 individuals that were working, yet considered underemployed. So that's not working full-time or working full-time, and they weren't making enough money to sustain their household through all of the situations that I just described. There's also 88 individuals receiving Social Security due to age or disability. Both the employed and SSI categories overlap, which means not only are they receiving Social Security assistance for a disability, but they're also employed. Another quick note, specifically about the targeted population that we plan to serve. There are several severe and persistent mental illnesses that have an early age of onset, between 18 and 24. Sometimes during this onset, some people find a solution by self-medicating with substances and then end up with a substance use disorder. And most of the time, those families who are supporting their loved ones don't know how to do it on their own. They can't do it in their own home, and they can't do it without professional support. Sorry. So the reason why the total of 325 is so high is that they're all the same population. They're all humans. The one population versus another doesn't work when you're talking about people that need extra support. Not only are they human, but they're here in Lewis County. They're already renting apartments or single family homes near you without support or supervision. They're your neighbors, the people you go to church with, the people your kids go to school with. And they're even people that work at the bank, work at the school, work at the county. They're not just unemployed and just don't want to take care of themselves. So how do we help this population become independent? How do we help and support our neighbors become self-reliant? Currently, individuals who are unhoused or on the street homeless are required to go to DSS to see if they're eligible, because Snowbelt is a program of last resort. On the street could mean in a tent in your backyard without permission, camping at the fairgrounds. Even believe we had a gentleman set up an apartment in a storage shed. Emergency placement is offered to those who are on the street homeless at the only 2 hotels in Lewis County, Ridgeview or The Edge. When those options are filled, the residents are placed outside the county, including Carthage, Watertown, Utica, or as far away as Pulaski. Individuals are then far away from their support system, without supervision, and often disengaged from their treatment, which can create some of the behavioral problems that you see on the news. Persons receiving temporary assistance are also required to attend follow-up appointments, sometimes on a daily basis. When they're placed out of town, they attend these appointments by using public transportation. But public transportation isn't on demand. Some people are left in Lowville with little options to return to their motel until the next bus comes. And if that person is employed without transportation, or we even had a couple people that didn't have the car that could make the drive, often they lose their employment while they're displaced. Additionally, the county is required by state mandate to provide code blue emergency housing options for all on the street homeless when the temperature drops below 32, using county funds, local funds, regardless of if they participate in programs or not. This means the person could stay at a hotel for the entire winter season. Motels include phone, electricity, cable, comfort, which decreases motivation to find a permanent placement. In addition, when these residents are placed out of county, the distance often creates a barrier for treatment, service connection, and access to social support, and the loss of employment. This means the people who are in need of the most support, such as persons with mental illness, substance use history, and youth or under the age of 25, are stuck far away from their community without their needed treatment, medication, and family support. So at this moment, if there's a person unable to work due to a physical or mental disability on the streets, they are often sent to temporary placement in an out-of-town hotel. So how do we get them back in the county? The second page of your handout demonstrates where the people were living when they entered our services and where they were placed when we found a long-term placement. So this chart shows that there were 15 households that had to find permanent placement outside of the county because there was nothing available here. There's also still 21 households that we haven't been able to place. And there also already inside of Lowville. So there was 46 people that we assisted when they came into services. There's 54 placed here right now. So in order to transition members from emergency placement to permanent housing, there must be more housing options available. The 2022 housing market needs analysis completed in 2022 identified there's a lack of affordable housing in the area, a lack of supportive housing for senior citizens, persons diagnosed with mental illness or substance use. All those categories are just examples. Snowbelt Housing currently manages 169 units dedicated to affordable housing. 138 are support residents who are senior citizens and adults diagnosed with a disability. But these apartments don't provide 24-hour supervision, and they don't offer services on site. It often leads our property managers to do much more than just property management because they have limited mobilities, they have limited connections, and they're alone. They don't want to go to a nursing home or to a supported facility out of the county, away from their families. Lewis County Opportunity also offers 320 vouchers to assist with rental subsidies. These are any rental apartment located in the county. I didn't get their data, but it's much of the same spread. They're already in Lowville and surrounding areas. And it currently has a wait list of 79 households. Then there is 7 vouchers of TLS supported housing units, also located on scattered sites. You also wouldn't know just from looking at those houses who's living there. All of these units are already here in your communities. There's even 12 located on Stowe Street. Although this may seem like a lot of resources, there are still 21 that we cannot place, and all of these options don't come with services. So the thing is, we don't have an option of, do we allow homeless into the county, or where are we going to place them? The only thing we have control over is, can we offer supported housing to the most vulnerable? There's something else that we're missing. Placing individuals who are in need of additional support into our community without that support often leads to repeated homeless episodes and transferring residents out of county to meet their needs. The 15 households that were placed out of the county due to lack of housing choices and created several families that had to place loved ones out of county just so they have the chance to become independent. The current process is expensive and ineffective. The handout from Ryan showed that we spent over $200,000 with local funds last year. Is there a better way? I should mention a disclaimer before we go over these project details. I'm not interested in creating housing that's just a physical structure to cover the heads of persons who are struggling to maintain independence. I'm also not a person that will ever lose faith in the ability of people, regardless of abilities or circumstance, to contribute not only to their village, but lead a stable and fulfilling life. I won't lose faith because I've seen it happen. They're not just like lazy and don't want to work and don't want to contribute. Some people truly don't have the ability to sustain and maintain without a little support. Okay, now the fun stuff. So I think Ryan mentioned in his handout also that we had a housing committee developed. We've actually been working on this project for over a year since the market needs analysis came. This isn't a county thinks it's a great idea, DSS, TLS. We all work together. There were 7 or 8 agencies that worked together with the same population, and we said, we can do better. Why are we placing somebody in a hotel in Pulaski for an entire winter season and then fighting to get them back in? What can we come up with? The two populations that were the most need are senior citizens, something that's in between Brookside and Valley View. So we're working on options for that population as well. We also looked at several sites in that county for a project to meet the supported housing needs. So for funding, TLS, what was the month that you got that award?
December.
December already? Okay, TLS secured an Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative grant. It's a state grant, and it's contingent on the development funding for the project. This will cover up to 16 units for services, equipment, rent subsidy, and property maintenance. The tenants will contribute 30% of their income, up to $658. Or if the fair market rent changes, I won't bore you with those details though. Credo was also recently awarded funding from Oasis and will assist with covering the rental expenses for the transitional units. The maximum stay would be 8 months of tenancy, or just until they are placed in permanent housing. So this will be a population that will be monitored 24 hours a day and supported 24 hours a day, so they're not in hotels or in transitional units without supervision in the community. And then Snowbelt will be submitting the Homeless Housing and Assistance Program grant application that will fully fund the construction of the project. There is no funding match requirement. However, the application is competitive and based off of scoring criteria. And then I'm gonna pass it along because I want, Shane and Maureen are currently running projects of supported housing. So I wanted them to talk about the services that are offered and what the housing that population actually looks like.
Who's first?
Either one. Yeah, I think the first.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity to come here tonight and have a conversation about what we're hoping to achieve here in Lewis County. I want to take a moment to introduce the team that will be the project leaders here. Sitting in the front row is Mark Waterhouse. He has worked at Transitional Living Services. Actually, his anniversary is a week from tomorrow, and it will be his 23rd anniversary. So we're actually looking forward to celebrating that. And sitting halfway back is Angie Bolivar, who is also a long-term 10-year this year employee at Transitional Living Services, and they will be the people that will be boots on the ground heading up our portion of the project here. You know, I don't know how closely you all follow the news, but we have a slightly different model of a project that recently opened in Watertown. It's the Pine Street SRO. And we are serving homeless males there. If you haven't seen the news in the past 24 hours, Channel 7 News, they did do an interview with one of the new residents in our facility. And I encourage you to look that up if you haven't seen it. The gentleman is very pleased and excited at the opportunity he's been given to live in this facility instead of living on the streets or couch surfing. And he plans to capitalize on this opportunity. So let me take a step back and talk about supportive housing as it's defined. It's a model that lets people who have been homeless or at risk of homelessness who belong to special populations, in this case, as we've discussed, folks with serious mental illness, folks with substance use disorders, and also young adults aged 18 to 25. Supportive housing lets them live independently in housing in the community, and then the services that they need to stay stably housed and become really good tenants are either facilitated or brought directly to them. And there's a big long list of the types of services that might be provided to them in Jalen's handout. So I get on the surface that this project may look really new and even a little bit scary, and we're gonna get to the part here where I'm gonna repeat some of the same things that Jalen has already mentioned. We developed our presentations completely independently, but we've hit on the same points in a lot of cases because that's just really how it is. The truth of the matter is that supportive housing has been offered here in Lewis County since the mid-90s. TLS has been operating supportive housing for folks with serious mental disabilities here in Lewis since April of 2012, when the county opted to contract out some of their services to reduce taxpayer expense. We actually have, and you were a little under on the number, 53 units of supportive housing scattered all throughout the county, but like Jalen said, you don't notice them because they could be any rental unit. I'm sure there are rental units in your neighborhoods that you know, that are practically invisible to you because they could be anywhere. Since 2014, we've also had the opportunity to serve the general homeless population with grants from HUD, Housing and Urban Development, here in Lewis. But what makes this project different is that we're building it from the ground up and putting a group of people in it together. So it does look different. You're going to be able to drive past this place and say, oh, that's the supportive housing unit. It's not going to be, you know, invisible anymore. Part of what drove this decision is that Lewis County is short on affordable housing stock, as Jalen has already mentioned. So right now, there's 13 households on a wait list for our supportive housing that just can't find a place to live in, even with our experienced help. Everyone deserves a decent place to live. We've all known friends or family who have had a mental illness or who have had a problem with substances, and I don't want anything less for them than I have for myself. Another benefit is that in the long run, this really is a more cost-effective way to deliver the services compared to paying our case managers to spend a good part of the day driving from home to home in a rural county like Lewis. Some of you may be thinking, does she just expect me to believe everything she's saying? And no, I don't. Projects like this are generally paid for with government funds, as we've alluded to, and our elected officials have both the desire and the obligation to ensure that the projects that they fund bring value and produce results. So supportive housing as a model has been studied for many years, and there is much literature available for your review. I brought an example here tonight that pulls together the results of several studies to address some of the most common things that folks worry about when they find out that a supportive housing project is coming to their neighborhood. Let me share 3 of them with you. So one of the main worries for folks in neighborhoods is my property value is going to decline if you build supportive housing nearby to my home. What the research shows is that property values do not actually decline when supportive housing is built nearby. Another worry is that crime will go up in my neighborhood if you build supportive housing nearby. The research says that crime does not increase when supportive housing is built. We have services that are coming right into the facility, supervision, security, and folks know where they're going to rest their head at night. That's a pretty big deterrent to committing a crime and losing that housing. The last one I wanted to mention as a worry is that residents living nearby supportive housing will be scared of the housing and the people in it, and it will change the character of the neighborhood. But the research says that residents' fears disappear once the supportive housing is built. So, I sincerely hope that the opportunity to have this conversation with you tonight and to listen to and answer your questions, if you have worries, will go a long way to helping erase those. And we're more than happy over the course of this project to continue to work and consult with the neighborhood, so that when the day comes that we're finally able to open our doors, that everybody is comfortable with where we're at. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Jalen was right. There are a lot of faces in here. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough to follow Maureen. Wow. First and foremost, I just want to say that I'm very excited for the opportunity to come here and be able to answer and try to help out with some of the conversations, because they can be, hard conversations to have. But also at the same time, to me, seeing everybody here today and all the people that are about this, that you guys are a very strong community. And that's what this is about. We're trying to help build an even stronger community, being able to help and assist people reach their maximum potential. And as I was talking to some of my coworkers and stuff about this today, just recently, I was reminded that Credo's actually coming up on their 50th anniversary. So 50 years being able to help and try to serve people that are struggling with recovery. And I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Credo, but I do want to say that the very first Credo location was a farm. And on that farm, people got the opportunity to find their, they had a roof over their head. They had people there that they could talk to. They had people there that they could explore their faith in. They had people that would help them with their life skills. How can I grow food? How can I just live independently? And then from there, the next step was, let's transition back into the community. And here we are 50 years later. We're talking about, transitional safety units, what is that? And how can that be beneficial for the individuals and the people that are already here? How can we assist them on learning to be and reach their maximum potential? So, I'm very excited to talk about that and those transitional units, what they mean. These are some of the first things that Oasis has been doing previously. It's been mostly permanent supported housing. And these transitional safety units, they recognize that people that are coming in and out of inpatient or coming in and out of a halfway house or a residential like farm, how can they reintegrate into the community? How can they find those jobs? And from my experience working with care management and starting with a lot of the housing things, is that you need that first off, you get that stability, you get your group of people around you that support you, that includes your family members, that means advocates, peers, it means clinicians, it means all these. It's a team effort and it's a community, and that's where we're at here with community. So, thank you very much.
Okay, like I said, we want to get to as many comments or questions as possible. I was given some questions that were written down. If anyone doesn't want to talk on camera or doesn't feel comfortable, feel free to write your questions down, and Jeremy will bring them up, like I said. So I've talked to a few people, and they said the best way to do this is people to ask a group of questions, and then we can answer them collectively to see if they're repeating. So what I can do is start with these questions and then move on to the community. Sound good? Okay. One is, have you looked at transportation options if this building were located outside of the village, either through the county transportation system, through one of the many agencies in Lowville, or by purchasing a van for this building? It seems that there's plenty of money to use, and with the high cost of the building, there should be room to scale back the building itself and use that money to purchase a van. What? Oh, you know what? I missed that chunk of the project. What, if anything, is in place to protect the neighborhood area from residents that come and go from the building, especially the people with active drug addiction and those with criminal histories involving drugs or violent crime, if those are not being screened out and denied? Do you have any information on current homeless individuals who qualify for this proposed building? I'm not asking for their identity, but rather, do you know enough of their life story to know why they are currently homeless? Have any of these individuals had past supports or housing offered to them? If so, have they denied that housing, chosen to leave that housing, or been evicted from that housing? Will prospective residents be screened and denied if they have a criminal history that includes violent crimes or drug-related crimes? Are there any guidelines that could result in someone being made to leave the shelter? For example, stealing from someone inside or outside of the building, selling drugs, and assault inside or outside of the building. Sorry, I forgot my project portion. I'll go over that in a second because I want to ask these or answer some of these. We look at transportation as one of the criteria that we have to evaluate the housing on. So we have to offer a place where people can live as independently as possible. So are they connected to public transit? Does it meet the employment needs? So can they get to places if public transportation is not available? And that does mean nights and weekends, and that does mean some walking. I do know there are options for transportation and vehicles and stuff. It's not a part of this grant. This grant is just for the hard costs of the actual building. We will have a screening criteria and occupancy rules. This is not a place where you don't have any rules and you have no accountability. It's actually very structured. I don't believe we determined all the screening and the exact occupancy rules. I think we have several models to choose from, but I don't honestly think that crimes, especially with substance abuse, are going to be a deterrent from, or it makes somebody ineligible from going to the building.
So where are you gonna put them after you kick them out? You're just gonna put them on the street?
When they're evicted?
Yeah.
Well, we do have services that can help them transition, but yeah, if it gets to eviction, then they'd be evicted.
So you're just gonna put them back out on the street again, so that's just...
We're gonna offer them a chance to live independently, but we can't make them stay, and we can't make them
So Jim, why don't you
respect
put them on a
other
bus and send them somewhere else instead of Lewis County?
Because there are people.
They're Lewis County residents.
But if they break the rules and get kicked out, they're gonna be back out on the streets.
So can we just do one at a time so that we don't get...
So the problem we have here is the working man has no rules or guidelines. The people that are on disability and then are not able to work, the working man's got to carry them and everybody else. The working man's the one that always suffers
So what
because he's
about the
carrying a bunch
working
of people
man?
on his back.
What about the working man that's homeless, though?
Why would the working man be homeless?
Oh man, that's, you talk about veterans?
I'm sorry, what?
Veterans?
Yes. We house veterans.
That's a little different.
Some veterans have a severe mental illness, and some veterans have substance use history,
I see
and
that.
some veterans are 18 to 24 as well.
Can I ask you a question? What is the price? I mean, what's the price tag that we are looking at here?
So the local community is $0. It's the maximum grant I can ask for.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
The government is the taxpayers, okay?
It's state tax dollars that were
So
collected
it's our
and claimed
money.
throughout the state.
Yep, and it's
not
already in the
Lowville's
budget. It's going out, whether it goes to our community or somebody else's.
Somebody's gonna spend it, whether it's here or someplace else is what you're saying.
That's not a good reason.
I keep hearing that all the time.
So what about housing your community members?
So, I got one question.
No, I really do want it. No.
I got one question for you.
Sure.
So it's already decided it's going up on Stowe Street.
No.
And then, if it doesn't go on
Yeah,
Stowe Street,
right.
where's it gonna go?
This is our best option. That's why I said, I'm sorry, I skipped. It is written down.
Who in this room has the potential to block it from going to Stowe Street, should the
Yeah.
people on that stage decide it's going on Stowe Street?
Actually, I don't know the answer to that.
If the taxpayers choose to buy an already existing facility, can that money go to that?
So in order for us to, run this program, it has to meet the guidelines. So what we did over a year ago was we started talking about the need in the community. We evaluated every site that was on the market at the time. We evaluated the old buildings that are available, like Glenfield and Lions Falls. And then we scored them based on the scoring criteria for the grant application. The scoring criteria is the location or proximity to services, access to transportation, involvement of their support network, which is their family and friends and church that are in their communities, and then the cost of new construction versus rehabilitation, the number of maximum units that can be at the location based on the budget for Ishai, and then the parking, zoning, and environmental layout. So with the top 3 locations, the Andover house was not big enough. Originally, we thought we could split it into 2 projects, but we are not able to do that with this project. The Glenfield site, I think it went up to 22 units, and there's a lot of contingent costs based on the rehabilitation of that project. So the amount of money that went out with the, I don't know where everyone got their numbers, but the one estimate did not include an engineering review of that building, and it based it on an estimate per square footage for that rehab. It's not the actual construction cost, but there is a lot of risk with lead asbestos abatement, reconfiguring the building, and we can't fit the amount of units that we need in there. And there's also 3 private funders interested in building or changing that to senior housing, which is a parallel need.
So who has the final say
Of what?
where this goes?
Of where it goes. So
Does this come up for a vote?
no, I actually don't know that.
No.
So no? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know the
Just
answer.
so we
No,
can
I'm
answer
not
that
trying to
question.
interrupt. I'm really trying to get this stuff on track, and you can tell me to leave if you want. I'm not trying to take this over. I'm really interested in the details of the safety aspect. I live on Stowe Street. I know the funding, the cost of it. I know that's a question. I know that's a concern. But I would just ask if we could maybe separate the conversation, and if we could get to the specific questions, maybe.
That wasn't.
I know.
Yeah,
I want an
We're
answer.
trying.
So can we get to
I think
yours
Jalen
next?
has put a lot of time
Yeah.
and effort into this presentation, and I appreciate everyone who is here tonight. And I know we all have questions and concerns. I just don't want to see this get so off topic and derailed that they shut this down and we don't get a chance to ask our questions. And
I'm
so
sure
I
you'll
just,
get a chance,
I
ma'am.
just,
I'm sure we'll stay long enough to do it.
no, I'm just asking people, I would like to go back to the questions that Jalen was asked and then move on from there.
Can we try and answer the one right off the bat?
Yeah, so I think that we got the security.
Let's,
Yeah, because I think we have 2 groups. We have one is the permission that's come up a few times, and then the safety and security. So do you want to do it?
This is a private project. It is not going to be voted on by the legislators. This is, we are, 2 of us here are members of Snowbelt Housing. I would bet 90% of you didn't know we existed until the last couple of weeks.
Oh,
yeah, we
did. Oh, yeah, we did.
We've always known that you existed.
We've done for 40 years housing. This is a project, we get millions of dollars every year in grants, taxpayer money, federal and state, that we invest in this community in housing and rehabilitation. I will be honest, this is the first time we would build a new building. We have always been restricted to doing rehabilitation. We help people buy homes, we help people renovate homes, we replace mobile homes. We've done that for years. The Board of Legislators will not decide what happens. It comes down to a board of your fellow citizens that come from across the county that
Well,
will
I just
make a
wanna know the
decision,
basis
just
of the law.
if I can, Mr. Member, let me finish. As far as your
Mike,
street goes, I will tell
settle
you.
down a minute, we'll hear you in a minute, but a couple of things that sort of I have to wonder about is, so there's no elected personnel involved in making a final decision about this? There's no
Coming
legislative
from
input.
the municipalities, is that what you're talking
I'm
about?
talking about there's no elected officials that are involved in determining whether this project goes forward. And in fact, it sounds a bit like this project is going forward regardless of what's decided here tonight. So let's be upfront about that first.
No, Tony, that's not true, because
Okay.
we may not get the grant. As
Okay, but if you get the
Jalen
grant-
pointed out,
I thought there were 62 grants offered in New York State.
Already.
One for each county.
but we
Not
have
for
to.
HHAP.
Okay. So you're telling me it's not?
I'm not saying that it's not gonna
Yeah,
happen, but
I
I'm saying we have to apply for the grant. We've lost other grants. We haven't scored high enough. There's no promises. And the property involved, quite frankly, is owned by the county. You want to put it point blank?
It's kind of a fixed, it's sort of a done
How
deal.
many
It's going
times
to go
have
up
they
Stowe
tried
Street.
to put
And
one?
there's,
I know that I worked for social services for 30 years, and how many times did our county put people, try to do a homeless county with nothing? That it didn't happen, or it wouldn't go forward.
I don't know what you mean, Kelly,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
On Dan Street.
All right, hi, I'm Jenny, I'm the Commissioner of Social Services, and I've worked with Kelly for many times, for many
Can you
years.
speak up a little bit? So people
Sure, I can. I have a loud voice. I'm Jenny Jones. I'm the Commissioner of Social Services. Kelly and I worked together for 30 years. What Kelly is referencing is prior to the pandemic, we had a homeless shelter on Diane Street in an apartment. Okay, and that's an absolute shelter. They were in and out until we could find an apartment, till we could find a bus ticket, till we could reunite somebody with their family, get them into treatment, whatever their need was. Okay, that was a shelter. We closed that shelter because the funding stream to continue to supply the appropriate services became unaffordable for us. The regulations became unwieldy, and that's through New York State regulations. This project is not a shelter. This project is for permanent housing. So I know I had talked to some people earlier today. I want you to think about like the Valley Views and the Witten places and High Falls Apartments. People move in, we don't hold you hostage. You can move out if you want. But this project for permanent housing for most of these units means you can stay as long as you follow the rules, you pay your rent, and you're a good tenant, right? And some people stay years, some don't. Some reach a goal of independence, they move out, maybe they buy their own home. So, some of the people Jalen was referencing, I can actually think of their first names. I've worked for the county long enough, I probably remember when they were born, and maybe when DSS was involved with them when they were children. And they don't have families that are supportive or helpful to them. So we've been looking for a place, an idea and a concept that helps support people that really are struggling. The lady in the back, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, you had a lot of questions about safety and security. And I will tell you, I think what Kelly's referencing back to is we did have some problems in that location. And that's what makes this different. There's 24-hour security and on-site staff. That's what we're looking to do. I think Maureen said to me she has some other ideas about what safety and security. I don't run these places. I send people to these places to live. Right now we have 2 people in a place like this in other counties. So think about that. Your tax dollars paying for that, they're paying to be someplace else, and it's not coming back in and employing Lewis County people that are working in this location. So It's not just that, it's the place you have decided to want to do this. Stowe Street has DSS up there, has the jail up there, and certain times of the day, you can't even pull out of your driveway because of the traffic. And now you want to put another big, huge development up there and clog up the street and the traffic to make it unsafe
for the school buses that stop umpteen times a day on there, and us that live on that street.
Can you,
And
can
the
you
foot
hold on
traffic.
one
And the foot
second?
traffic.
Can you hold on one second,
Alright,
so
so-
Maureen can get to the.
So
the
we'll ask
safety
Maureen to
rules.
talk about safety for a minute,
Yeah,
and then I think
sorry, I don't wanna
traffic
miss her.
safety is something different. But Maureen, if you could talk about the physical safety.
To make it easy on the safety, you guys
Yeah.
are talking a lot about the 24/7 safety.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming by you going in depth about the 24/7 safety that all the residents of the facility will not be able to leave unless they sign out. or
They're adults, they can come and go as they want.
Correct? They can come and go as they want?
Absolutely.
So security at the building is almost a mute point.
Yeah.
People are.
Lone boy.
Yeah, lone boy, because they can leave anytime they want to, so they can come down the street in the middle of the night and do something.
But right now, you're talking about people that are homeless that have no place to go, and they're walking up and down the street anyway. And they're sleeping at the bus shelter at DSS, and they're sleeping at the Dollar General, and they're sleeping in the pirate ship at the park, and they're sleeping at the fairgrounds, right? They're sleeping under the bridge. We know that. We've seen them. You've seen them. So, right, if they have a place to go in the middle of the night, that's their apartment. That's a great incentive, right? I have a place to go.
You know, all that is really fine. You know, everybody here, I'm sure, really has the best interests of the people in this county. You know, I'm from the county, I want to take care of the people in the county. But the problem I have is that your record is not complete. You know, this has been going on for decades, literally.
And
You've
you
got one
talk
facility
about all
after
the
another facility,
statistics.
one agency after another agency. There's no publicly elected officials that are running these things. It's all agency people.
Definition
I
of
don't
maternal
understand.
life is a government agency.
What's that?
The definition of maternal life is a government agency.
Can't kill a kid.
Just one point I want to make is that there are nonprofits running this, and we do have 170 apartments in the community right now. And 138 are senior citizens and adults with disabilities. So it is the same population.
I'm
So
sure
it's-
that's a really difficult situation to handle. And it could be corrected to a degree, but I'm not sure $10 million in one facility is really the answer. You know, what are your metrics? How do you decide at the end of 2 years that this is a success?
It
And
will
what if
not
it
go
isn't?
over 9.
A lot of the homeless people though want to be homeless. If you give them an apartment, are they going to stay there? No, they don't want to do that.
So let's take a
Yeah,
step
but I'm
back
saying
for a
it's
second.
Maureen's gonna talk about
And
this, and then he's got a question right here, sorry.
we had some questions early on about exclusions and about the security. These, I can address those questions because we already operate programs that work under similar circumstances. We want to be good neighbors in the community. That is our goal. We're serving the community. A homeless person is still a member of your community regardless. And Jenny will tell you that putting them on a bus and shipping them to a county that they are not connected to is literally not an option. It doesn't work that way. Otherwise, people, you know, counties all throughout the state would be trading off their most difficult people to serve in a way like that. So we need to keep our people here and wrap the services around them. The question earlier was about exclusions. And yes, we don't welcome every single person into our facilities. We don't welcome arsonists. Not a very good placement. Put many lives at risk. We don't welcome people with a history of drug manufacturing. Why? Because, well, that can practically be arson when the meth pot explodes. Will we welcome people with a history of using drugs and possibly minor drug sales? Yes, I'm sorry, but that's what we're here to do. Will we welcome sex offenders? No. We're right next door to an ARC facility. There are vulnerable people that already are in that neighborhood day in and day out, and I'm sure there are children as well. So no, we most certainly will not welcome sex offenders, nor will we welcome folks who have a history of, you know, violent crimes against other people.
Okay, you're saying you're not gonna allow them. Then answer this question. say Billy Bob, we'll use Billy Bob as an example, comes, he's a level 2 sex offender. What are you gonna do with him? You're not gonna let him come into the thing, so you're just gonna have him walk back out and walk the streets?
He's already
He's
right.
already
He's
on
already
the
on the
street.
street. He's already here.
Yes.
He's already here.
We will try to serve Billy Bob through the other avenues that we have available, placement in other locations in the county. This is not meant to be a one-size-fits-all solution. What it's meant to be is a good solution, an
I just don't want
proven
Billy Bob to
solution.
walk down the street, because then I might have to shoot him. He comes down my side.
I'm not going to respond to that, but
Did you
as
have a
far
question in the back?
Yeah, let me just
Oh.
quickly reiterate on the security. People have touched on it, but we will have surveillance banks, surveillance equipment around the entire facility, inside and outside. There will be solid exterior lighting. There will be staff on hand 24/7 to know what's going on in the building. You can't do much more than that. And so, sir, your question?
Yeah, so my name's Robert. I work with Alltech Integrations. We're a fire security company. We do a lot of good stuff with Valley View and all their sites. We make sure they're protected and all the people within. As far as like the security aspect of it, I have a few customers that have homeless people breaking into their complexes. Now, would you want that? You wouldn't want that. So to better help them, get them in a place where they're secure, get the help they need, and then the security part can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, we see it every day in our world.
I think it's a lot safer to have somebody who's housed in our facility than somebody who's breaking into your garden shed or your garage and setting up camp. Ma'am?
And this goes back to Mike. That plot of land is county owned. So how can there not be a county vote about when we had to buy our little piece of county land, it had to go up for auction?
Ma'am, I didn't say that they did. I was
You
making
said we had no control. This
No,
is
I
gonna
didn't
happen.
say, ma'am, I didn't say that. I said the project is ours.
Right.
Where it goes, if the county decides not to give us that property, then we have to look someplace else. There's no question about that.
So we can decide if that property is gonna be used. Because we're
Your
county.
legislators can do that.
So
They don't
we
get used
can't
then.
vote.
They don't use that.
Those 10 people vote, not us. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The 10 legislators will vote and we will not.
So can I just,
I've heard it's been passed by the legislators already.
No, it hasn't.
We have, I think, 3 legislators in the room that has not been passed.
So if they don't, you have an alternate site.
we would go back to the drawing board and evaluate the sites that we have. So I think the reason why Mike is saying, like, our board voted that yes, this is a good project, yes, we can partner with TLS, yes, we can find an area. We very much looked at buildings that were still there because we are a rehabilitation company. So we do want to renovate existing sites. So we'll go back to the drawing board and evaluate the best location. But at this time, there's not one that comes close to Stowe Street. So it is right in the same parking lot as DSS and the Sheriff's Department. It is close enough for people to be independent, to grocery shop by themselves, to walk to services by themselves.
Well, that may not be entirely true either.
What?
There's
I'm sorry.
2 or 3 acres by the NERCL office, which is another facility that's been built up by whatever agency decided to build it up. I'm not sure about the funding of that.
That's an office,
I know, but there's 2 or 3 acres back there.
and
Could
that's
easily
owned
support
by
something
a
like this.
private property owner, yes.
Sure.
I want you to think about, one of the things that I know that I thought about in looking at some of the properties, and I was on the original committee, was my office sits on what was the county home, right? And that burnt down. And that was the place for 100 years.
We burned it. It didn't burn down.
That didn't burn down.
Yeah, I have the posters in my office, but there was a boiler fire in 1986, and it burnt down. And I want you to think about that. That was the location the county scouted all those years ago to have a place. I put a few flyers back there when there was a nice story about, you know, the alms house, and that's where we have traditionally taken care of people that needed help. It is a good piece of property, and it is owned by the county. Our legislators will get to decide that, if they want to sell the property for this project to take care of our community members, or if they don't want to do that. But it is zoned appropriately. That doesn't mean the county couldn't build a building on there later or sell it to someone else that maybe would want to build a building or make it something else.
Will it be a requirement to be a Lewis County resident?
Hmm?
Will it be a requirement to be a Lewis County resident
No.
to be positioned at that facility?
No, just like I said, I currently have 2 people out of county in supported housing. So I have 2 Lewis County people in another county living in supported housing.
I think the question was, will there be people from other counties
Yes.
that are going to be?
Potentially, it usually doesn't happen much, but.
So there's
Serving
really, the
residents.
laws and the regulations are very loose. I mean, it's just kind of loosey-goosey stuff.
So is this
Serving the
homeless
residents
or long-term shelter?
So that's what,
It's permanent
Just
housing.
serving the
So
residents
it's
of Lewis
assisted-
County.
It's basically low-income housing.
No, it's assisted.
So what is the term on the long-term units that an individual can stay before they put themselves on their own feet?
Permanent,
Permanent housing.
So it's permanent assisted housing.
yes.
But you also
Income
said
based.
something about 8 months is the term, the long term.
Those are the separate TSU units from Credo. The number 1 priority is to serve the residents of Lewis County.
So what happens when more than 16 residents need assisted living?
Then we go back to what we were saying we would do to help Billy Bob. And that is use the other avenues that we have available. Those 53 supportive housing units that we already have aren't going anywhere. There will continue to be the same options that have been in Lewis County to serve homeless people with substance use disorders or mental illness that there have been now for decades. That's not going away. This is not a swap out of something. All we're doing is building in more opportunity for people not to be homeless on the streets or sleeping on somebody's couch or in their shed. And when they get there, we're gonna help them.
So let me get this right. So $10 million for 15 units? Is that
20.
9 million for up to.
10 million, is it $10 million? I guess I'm not familiar with the numbers.
9 million for up to 20. That's the max.
TV said 13. Where are they getting theirs that are different from yours?
So I have a booklet that I was just talking to Nick about. So what we did was evaluated the top 3 sites based on what the number of units need is. So at Stowe Street, we could basically give the wish list because it's an open lot. We could have gone up more, whatever. So we wanted to see what 20 units look like with a layout, a large community room. So GYMO evaluated that based on an estimate of square footage for 20 units that are 650 square feet. The reason why it can fluctuate is because we can change that square footage. So we can reduce the number of units, we can reduce the community room size. What we can't do is apply for a grant for more funding than the project requires. So I can guarantee it won't be over 9 million. If we have to adjust the size of the units, then that's what we're gonna do. The estimate also included contingency costs that are recommended in the grant, but not always applied to new construction. So I think it had over $1 million for lead, asbestos testing, stuff that we know we're not gonna put lead and asbestos in a new construction building, so we won't need those funds.
So is there gonna be an overall director of the whole complex?
Yes.
So, yep.
Who's gonna be the overall director?
Well, Snowbelt will be the owner.
That's not what I asked you. I wanna know who the director's gonna be. The one person that is in
We don't
charge
know that
of
yet.
everything.
It's a hypothetical project at this
Oh,
point.
I got you.
That's too
I
far
understand.
down.
That's what I wanna know.
There will be that position, I don't know who that's going to be at that moment.
That's most my question.
So the reason why, I'm sorry, I skipped that whole location and size section of the notes. So we did evaluate based on what is out there, what's the location like, is transportation able to, can we purchase a car with this grant? We went through every scenario, narrowed it down to the 3. GYMO did a feasibility estimate based on the scoring criteria and what is it going to cost, how many units can we fit into Andover, Glenfield. We also knew that Glenfield would be available again when DSS goes back, so we knew we were going to use that study regardless of if we move forward or not. But the next step will be to select an engineering team, and that's where this will be our only answer if it goes through, everything's perfect. That's where we're going to get those answers, because we're going to look at the drainage plans, the makeup of the land, can it sustain the size of the building. We're going to get the actual cost estimates of materials right now. So that's when we'll finalize all of that stuff while we're building what makes the most sense for the selection criteria for this unit, the occupancy rules, the exact number of staff and what those positions are going to be called. Like, all of that's going to be built as soon as we select that. But the reason why, so I know I saw a couple news articles previous to this, but we have been working on it for a couple years. There's been articles like Lewis County is going to try and figure out the homeless problem. We're going to try and figure out something to do. So this study wasn't the first time it was mentioned in public, and I'm going to be attending either the town or village meeting every month, so everyone's on the same page, so we have that open communication. At any time, this project could be off the table for this location. Once we select all that and get it shovel ready, that's when we're going to submit the grant. So that could be up to 8 months. But we had to start discussing this for the land contingency agreement. So if we get the grant, then we would get the land. We had to discuss it now because all of that does take so long. And the permits, the water usage, all of that. Yes, sir?
Does the grant just cover the building? And what happens when the grant runs out?
So the grant that I'm talking about, the
Yes.
Chevelle portion, is HHAP. That covers just the construction, engineering. Is that what you mean? Like the engineering cost drawings? Yeah, it covers the build of the project.
So not transportation, not extra services and all that kind of stuff?
But
That's
they're
not-
getting other grants for
So-
each individual unit to cover the cost of the building.
No, so the ESHI one that we get 5 years at a time, do you want to?
Yep. So the Empire State Supported Housing Initiative grant that TLS originally applied for provides funding that kicks in after the building is built and ready to occupy. It will pay rental subsidies. It will contribute to the operation of the building, the day-to-day operation of the building, and it will pay for the staff that are on site and delivering services to the residents of the building, and also to help get residents out into the community if they're receiving services there.
How about maintenance, snow
Yes,
clearing?
when I
all
say
that kind of stuff?
operational, that's the operational aspect.
Insurance, maintenance.
Actually,
So you're saying that if you get this grant, you're automatically gonna get these other grants?
no. What the state's approach to this has been, since it involves having a service aspect, that's a requirement. The state first goes out and asks the communities who is interested in providing these services, because their first priority is to make sure that they have a good service partner or partners in the community. You know, this is an oversimplification, but anybody can build a building. They want to choose service providers that have demonstrated histories of being able to make a positive difference in people's lives.
how
So
long
these,
do you think
will
this
these
is
be
gonna
put up
take
for bid?
before it's built?
The building be put up for bid?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, you know, there will be a general contractor that will use, you know, the overhead, and then there will be work created in this community for subcontractors.
Also, how many good paying jobs do you think it'll bring to Lewis County?
For the services?
Yep. Full-time care, security, maintenance?
Probably about 2 FTEs, and in terms of the services, there will be the
I picture probably 10 to 12. Rough estimate between staffing?
Oh, you mean staff?
Li-
Yes.
FTEs No, it's a little bit high for a project of this
Full-time
size.
It's not an industry position.
Well, the taxpayer jobs, what you have to understand about the funding is they get funding, somebody's gonna use the tax dollars, whether it's Lewis County or not. So those
That's not a
positions,
really good
that's
argument.
25, I know,
That's
but
really not a
it's
good argument.
25,000
I think
per
everyone
head.
here realizes what
Listen,
bucket
buddy,
you're taking
I'm on
out
both
doesn't
sides
make
of
a
the fence,
difference.
I'm the devil's advocate.
You're not-
So if
you're
it's
not
gonna
a guy. You're a good
happen,
guy.
it's 25,000 per head that they get, which won't cover all building maintenance and salaries there. Some of it will have to be covered from outsourced funding. But it will provide jobs to Lowville, which may help some of the individuals that are in the county suffering from housing shortage, maybe get back on their feet. And I'm sure they could write in a stipulation, since there's plenty of people from the county, that whoever the general contractor is may possibly be from the county, and that any materials utilized, if financially feasible, should be purchased from county vendors.
Well, you know, if you can ensure that.
Well,
that might
our
be a couple
preference
points.
on all of our contracts
Just
are
about.
actually small local contractors. So it is possible to do it. All the grant funding that Mike was talking about that we get every year, our first priority is small local contractors, so it's outside money coming into the county.
I got a question. Is that red? That's for the,
This is the outline of, yeah, this model of building.
okay, where's the sheriff, the other buildings?
The sheriff's right here.
Okay.
This
do
is
you-
Department of
Do you know
Social
where their
Services.
drainage, their septic drainage
Yeah, it
and all
goes-
that stuff is going?
Oh, no, the engineers are doing a plan, so I don't wanna
Well,
like
is it
overstep.
going right
but
there? Are you gonna be building that facility where the drainage is?
Am I going to be building it?
No.
So-
Are you
No.
going to be building
Maybe.
where the drainage is from the septic
I'll get
system
a
and
shovel.
everything else is flowing out?
No.
That could be a big issue.
Yeah, they,
on
so
the
they have
village
an
sewer.
environmental,
Village sewer, not septic.
We have a
Town
sewer.
owns the lines.
they have an environmental
You have to get the okay
engineer
from the
that's
village
going to
to do it.
design that drainage plan. But I've had early communication with the town and village. It's possible we have to get permit requests in now, even if we don't use it.
The
So that's why we need that
last time
engineering.
They
for
wanted to
now.
put something up there, the village refused to give permission to hook into their lines.
Yeah.
So if you have no water and you have no sewer, you got a building with not much up there.
Right, right. So it's contingent. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with that specific site, but what you folks should know is that in this year's state budget, this is the state, not Lewis County, not anybody else. The state has in their budget a requirement that counties are expected to build affordable housing, approximately 3% a year. And if you do not do that, the state will do to us what they did with the siting of windmills and solar farms. They will come in
Give permission.
and they will take over. And just as we have Article 10 placement and we have absolutely no say anymore in where our windmill farms go or our solar farms go, the state will come in and say, we're taking over, and they will supersede, if this passes the budget, they will supersede local things. And while we have a chance as a community to pick a place, and I'm not talking whether it's Stowe Street, Glenfield, wherever, we have a chance to do that as our citizens in our county. If we don't do it, the state's gonna come in and say, you know what? This is where it's gonna go. And when you say the village won't give us a permit, the state's gonna say, tough luck, it goes. So we could lose it. So while we have this argument, and we have this discussion, we need to understand we could lose that, just as we did with the windmills and the siting of solar farms, and what the state's now talking about doing away with our chances to argue about or to discuss pilots. They're going to start putting those in place, and they're going to cut our funding. So
It doesn't sound like the state is much of a friend of ours.
I happen to agree with you.
Why are you dealing with these people?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a choice. But I just point that out so that we think about that.
Couple more questions. Sorry, can I ask her to go first? Sorry, I was.
So when you're talking about affordable housing, so for a 650 square foot apartment at $9 million for 20 of them,
Who says it's gonna be $9 million? That's the
You just
maximum
said that,
grant.
Mike.
No,
You just
what
said
we've
it.
said is that's the maximum grant.
It
We
will
don't
not
know what
go
it's gonna
overnight.
cost.
Yeah.
But what
We
does
have
that
no
building
idea.
cost? What's the picture of the building? What is that
It's-
building on the wall? What does that cost?
This is the concept.
It's a concept. We don't know
So
what it's
what we're
gonna
trying
cost.
to build, so
We don't know
think
what it's
we're
gonna
not-
cost.
Let her finish, let her finish.
Jalen has stated that it's max of $9 million, right? For a 650 square foot apartment, that comes to about $450,000 per apartment, right? Who
I'll
here
take one.
lives in
Ma'am, I don't disagree.
$450,000
Ma'am,
house?
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree.
No one here does, right? So when you consider it affordable housing, is it the right use of our taxpaying dollars at that cost? So I think that's where you're getting a little bit of pushback. The other point I want to make is that maybe we consider providing better services to these people within the county. Does the county have a county psychiatrist?
No. The county does not own the mental health clinic anymore. Remember?
There you
So maybe
Transitional
more
Living
about
Services runs the
services
mental health clinic.
and helping this population in addition to getting them housing, but maybe it's the other services we need to concentrate on.
We try to take advantage of growing and expanding our services at any time we have an opportunity to. And there is a lot in the governor's budget as it is proposed this year that will funnel more, the opportunity to provide more services in the community. The only people that need services, though, are not folks that are homeless. This is not just one and the same. There are many other community members, children and adults alike, that are being served through other services that are being provided by not just TLS and Credo, but other organizations that are in the room tonight. Lost the thought there for a second. The reason, I just want to go back to the reason that the county divested itself of these, the county-based mental health and substance use services back in 2012 was really because of the burden of civil service. You know, you deal with unionized contracted employees, and those wages go up year after year. The burden of health care, the burden of the retirement system, quite frankly, at the end of the day, it proves less expensive to have all these nonprofits that are here and have taken those services over from the county to provide that money. If the county continued to provide those services from 2012 up to now and into the future, in order to get the money to continue to pay those escalating costs of wages and benefits, that is an increased taxpayer cost.
Well, I'm sorry to skip you again. I will get you next.
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions that we're getting are about money, which is confusing because over and over again, you're saying that it's more cost effective. I know if we look at Housing First that was in Houston, it time and time again, this saves the community money. These people are less often to be, doing criminal behavior, they're less likely to go back into prison. Just the cost of all those services. So the questions, I think we're guising them as financial questions, but it sounds like a lot of fear. I know I was raised on welfare. I received food stamps as a kid. My mother was homeless for a time. I can say that opportunities, TLS, the whole shebang has changed my life phenomenally. But I do know that as a family member of somebody who's been homeless and as a family member of somebody who has struggled with mental illness, it's really hard to combat the fear and the stigma. I think not everyone, but some of the people who have spoken, this them that they're talking about is, these imagined criminals and rapists. So I guess I fear if we take these people in need and we put them in one spot, we've already had people here talk about violence against them if they step out of line. Is there going to be a panel or a forum going forward to educate people against that stigma? The mentally ill are far more likely to be victims of violence than they are to ever be perpetrators of violence.
Pat?
Yes.
That is Pat. Yes, and I appreciate your
My name is Pat Fralick, and I'm the Director of Community Services for the county. And one of the things that has certainly been in my mind since this conversation has been so out there is that the work that we've done to educate people about those that suffer from mental health or substance use issues, there's more work to be done. I guess when we talk about stigma and we talk about somebody that is acting in a bad way, or as a result of their behaviors end up incarcerated or end up in very awful circumstances, that's going on every day here. It is. And if you can say to yourself that your family or yourself haven't had to deal with that, God bless you. I mean, just be grateful for that. However, the reality is that mental health and substance use does not hone in on people that are homeless or victims or whatnot. It can affect anyone. And I can tell you that the organizations that serve our county are committed, they are passionate to be able to help and assist people. When I say help and assist people, I'm talking in partnership. Essentially talking about opportunities to provide information, education, support for somebody that's struggling, somebody that just is having difficulty. I can tell you that it isn't a one-time admission that's going to fix everything. That's not how things happen. Just like if you have diabetes, you take some medicine, you get off on a cake little walk, you're going to have some symptoms that are going to reappear. Your doctor yells at you, more medication and things like that. Substance use and mental health issues is the same chronic disease. People require support, people require medication, people require things that you might take for granted in your life. What I'm hearing absolutely that it doesn't make sense, the money, where the money comes from, how it's going to be spent. You know, I can tell you that the studies that support a situation like this demonstrate over and over again that this works.
Where does it work? I think you're mischaracterizing a lot of people here. I think you're really mischaracterizing a lot of people here. The fact of the matter is I believe everybody here really wants to lend a hand to anyone in this area that needs help. I think that's a foregone conclusion. The issue is whether this project, as conceived, really will accomplish the goals. In fact, we don't even know what the goals are. We don't know what the rules are, and we don't know if the rules are really going to be enforced.
Okay. So
I've seen projects in major cities that have turned from wonderful buildings within a matter of 10 years into derelict housing. So where is your information coming from?
So my information is having worked in the field for 40 years.
Where?
And well, here for the past days. But anyway, mostly in Watertown. But what I was going to say is, and I didn't get the chance, is the fact that and I'm going to own that I'm not from Lewis County. What I've learned in the 8 years that I've worked here is that this is a community with just what you said. This is a community that cares about their family. This is a community that takes and houses people so that they're not under the bridge, that have the support and whatnot. And that, let me tell you, it doesn't happen everywhere. I think the other thing, now say I got on a tear, is that this does work. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not reading the same magazines you are, but the stuff I'm reading, this does work. And I think that the other thing that needs to be considered, and I absolutely get that if this isn't something that you know about personally, and this is something suddenly across the street that you're looking at, or it's going to be on Stowe Street, and that's where my office was, and whatnot, I absolutely understand your concerns and your questions, get that. I can also tell you that the organizations that are in this room that have partnered on this are educated, they are experienced, because that would be something, if I was across the street, having worked all this time, would I have these questions? Sure. But one of the things that I know as an inside track is that our organizations that you just described let something go into the toilet? Absolutely. However, I can tell you that having been employed at Credo, and I think I worked at TLS too a long time ago, that these organizations and their staff, they know how to do it right. They absolutely do. They have experience at this. They have outcomes, successful outcomes, and success stories. This works. So I guess from where I'm sitting, is I think that it's great. I mean, look at you, people care about your community. You're in this room, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. You're willing to express yourself, you're willing to talk and ask questions. And I think what this is like a point in time, because right now we're really kind of talking about a bunch of what ifs. We don't know if anybody's going to give us the money. And I said something else that I think you need to think about is the fact that we didn't decide how this money was going to be doled out or where the money came from. This is opportunities that have been, somebody way down in Albany's decided that, or at the federal level, that we're going to take this amount of money and this is what people can do with it. Here you apply and we'll go from here. So right now there's not the answers you want, but I can also tell you, regardless of the fact of the responsibility and the requirements of the people that will be accepted in this, there's rules. There is more rules and there's more oversight than you can even imagine. And then the people that are going to serve externally, they're being monitored. Are they doing what they're supposed to do? And is there a plan? We don't wait until somebody's in the toilet before we try to intervene. We try to help people as they go. So that's all I got.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I worked in social services, and I saw everything that you're talking about every day, and I worked in the court system. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because of the cost. And it's not just the cost of this idea. Lewis County is getting bombed on each side of the head. I mean, we have a new county DSS, we have the new building down below, and now this. And I'm a taxpayer, and I have to pay my bills, so that's my concern. And I understand what all of you were saying through all of your agencies. Been there, done that. And have a great respect. Can we do better? Some of our people that, as you said, yes, I know your workers are good, but you can always do better, always. But the cost of this is,
So $9 million doesn't come from anybody in the county that hasn't already been taken.
it does. When you
talk, somebody's gonna spend it. Jefferson County will spend it if you give it up. Oneida County will.
I don't.
You're saying it's state mandated, right? To build this. That's what.
Well, it's not state mandated.
It's state mandated to increase
Okay, it's proposed.
the number of units.
Do they say the size it has to be?
No, that is grant, so it's state mandated to create units in this county based on. Oh geez, so I think it could be any affordable unit, so it doesn't have to be supported. Does not have to be supported housing.
Well, so I have also heard that there's the possibility that private investors that don't utilize any tax dollars whatsoever can build out or facilitate a large enough facility to anyone's requirement,
Right.
and can be temporarily leased until which it's
For the
no longer
same
functional, and then it
services.
could be given back, so that there's no long-term effect on the community of Dunedin.
Yep.
To Mike's point earlier, 3% of what? What is that number?
So 3% of new units per county, right? It's each county has to grow according to the state
I
plan,
understand.
and if they don't, and they go to each municipality and say, oh,
Was
we
it
have
3%
permits
of
that were
100 or
blocked.
300, 3% of 300? I mean, what's 3% per year mean?
Affordable housing units in the current.
Yeah, yep. I can look
Tony,
up the
people
exact
can't answer
numbers.
those questions. It's still in the state budget.
Well, 3%, you must know how many.
What? That's the number they threw out. All I can tell you is that's what it is. You know, we're all guessing. We don't know those. Budget hasn't been passed yet. It may not even get in there. There are people fighting it, and I'm hoping that it doesn't get in. But I was just saying, it's things we have to worry about.
I'm
It's
not
a
saying the
loss.
need isn't here.
It's a
Don't get me wrong.
loss.
I think
It's a
the need
loss
is
of
clearly
local
here.
control that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
It's a loss of local control. I want to decide. I think we should decide that, not
I'm just
all.
trying to get to a number. 3% isn't 3%.
I wanted to answer the
3% of housing
question in the
units,
back
they said.
about the number of units.
Sorry.
3% of how many housing units?
Of the existing housing
What is
units.
the number of existing housing?
She gave that before. What's the number of existing housing units?
Oh, in the state?
No, in Lewis County.
Oh, no, that was only the ones that we own and manage.
Oh.
But there is others.
The gentleman in the
There's
back
multiple.
asked why so big. So Jalen gave some numbers early in the presentation about the numbers of homeless people. And what we did is we went back through data of who's come into DSS over multiple years, what were their issues. We use right now a system called HEMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System. I see some heads shaking from NERCL, they've heard of it. And we put data in there to determine how many people are being served in our county, but every county does this to try to determine what's our homeless people and what are their predominant issues for needs. So based on looking at that data, we came up with this number as a good number. Actually, we're like, should it be bigger? Should it be smaller? We thought this was a good starting point based on already having some supported units that are scattered site within the county. So it was based on who we're already serving. That's how we came up with the number.
So you could go smaller.
Technically, we
You
could.
could do like a pilot program, see if it works.
But then when it gets so small, you don't have enough of those operating dollars to continue, right? Because if you get $25,000, gentleman in the back's been very clear about that, $25,000 per unit, you shrink that, you don't have enough
To cover the
cover the
services,
overnight and all
operating,
that.
insurance.
And what's the plan if you don't get the grant to pay for the upkeep of the building?
They don't get the grant, they're not building it.
We already have the upkeep funds
For how many years?
for 5 at a time.
What happens at 5 years if you don't get it?
Then
What
they
is your
become a-
backup plan?
Sorry, got excited. Then they become affordable units with a homeless designation, and we could actually house without the services.
And it will-
Would
it will
we?
sustain
No,
itself.
because then we would reapply.
Yeah, that sounds like there's gonna be a lot of control of these people. So in 5 years, 10 years, whatever, you're gonna cut it loose. And then it's gonna be trashed and up Bow Street, no one will come up to that green space.
We're gonna have a contingency agreement, and it's gonna be like a legal written document that this is who we're gonna serve. The units that we manage now are 50-60, and you can say that, but we are currently doing that, and we're holding to our word, so I don't know why we would do that. I don't know what the motivation,
Can we talk about HHAP funding? So the capital money that comes from HHAP to build the building before we move in with the operating and service funding is actually in the form of a contract that commits Jalen to operating the project as a homeless project for X number of years. It's like a mortgage, it will amortize down over those 25 years until you're released from the contract. In fact, TLS has some HHAP contracts in St. Lawrence County that in the next 2 to 5 years will actually expire, and we'll have the opportunity to decide whether or not to continue to operate them as homeless housing or to convert them to merely affordable housing. The eSHI grant, I don't want to over-focus on the fact that it's a 5-year contract term, because so long as the project is operating the way it's intended to, and believe me, the state comes in and monitors us to make sure that we are doing what we said that we would do. and they will issue, you know, it's not licensed, so it's not really a citation, but they will tell us what we're not doing right, and they will tell us you need to make a plan of correction and follow that. It's not like we're out there without any oversight, but so long as we do what we do, those eShot grants will be renewed on a 5-year contract cycle.
Yes, sorry.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I think there should be a public information officer or something assigned by whoever up there, because there's so much misinformation. Like tonight, all of a sudden it's 9 million. Okay, it's been out there in the news, 13.7. There's been so much, you know, and then this is stuff that we hear from each other that is, and then on the streets, there's so much negativity because of all this. Nobody's given the correct information or given the wrong information as correct information. There needs to be somebody, because legislators, one of them said incorrect stuff. I got stuff here from the news that, you know, there's been, I have 3 sources here that were official that aren't correct. So I think you have to get somebody so that we can be all on the same page, public and government. And also, my second thing is, hopefully the town and the village, as far as safety, gets apprised of some of this stuff before it's too late. Everything's the building, okay? And my thing, it's the outside of the building. It's the sidewalk, it's the hill crest that's coming up there. It's the crosswalks that need to be put in, okay, for the safety. So the building, I don't see a problem with that as far as the building itself, but there's a heck of a lot more issues that involve people like DPW, the town, and things like that. They have to be considered too, because if you get too far ahead with a project, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what about the outside?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I agree with you. That's why, so this is the concept drawings, and we had estimates of various sizes, and I think we even had a congregate idea for Andover. So we were trying to compare them based on the same scoring criteria so that we could measure them directly. But that next stage is where the environmental engineer, the drawings, the systems, the permits, all of that happens before it's even like shovel ready or awarded, if that makes sense. So that includes all the public services.
Because as far as I know, the town hasn't even been contacted.
I was at the town board meeting last week.
She was at our meeting this month with supervisor.
Town supervisor?
Yeah, Bob was there, our whole meeting.
Okay, that was a couple
Yeah, and then,
days ago, so I don't
so
know.
monthly, and the only reason why I say or is because I have a conflict, but monthly I'll be at the town or village board meeting to give project updates. Yes.
Let's go back to the operational grant.
Yes.
We're talking about this on a 5-year review basis, and I think that's a big piece of that safety and security area. Whether those services are there, whether that security is there. So you had said that if things are being run the way that they're supposed to, it will be renewed. Do you have any sense of percentage? Like,
so
it could possibly not be renewed, but what are the chances that it wouldn't be versus the chances that it would be based on your past history with other programs that you're aware of or that you've run yourself?
We're very fortunate locally, I think within the Tri-County area that TLS operates in, that we have a good track record. I'm not aware, certainly there are very few of these exact type of contracts here locally. Quite honestly, I'm only aware of funding being expanded and being able to bring in more projects rather than constrict projects. And maybe that's because, you know, we're just a part of the state that's fortunate enough to have communities and partners that get together and do it right.
That doesn't exactly square with the history. I was on the board of Lewis County General Hospital for a number of years. There were absolute positive droughts in the past. There was no state money. They would cut back, cut back, cut back. So where's your history that this is an ongoing bright yellow brick road that we can all go down?
I've been involved in this type of funding now for just over 10 years personally, and I have inherited experience with the funding from projects.
You must know
that-
how unreliable government funding is. I mean, come on.
Well, it's worked out for us.
Fort Drum went through sequestration back 10 years ago, right? So.
And we still have Fort Drum, and Fort Drum has not been drawn back or cut down. And why is that? It's because every time that Fort Drum has been on the chopping block, the communities of Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence County have gotten together and showed the value.
But they've been cut back.
Not,
Take my word for it, they have.
not in any significant manner.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think every nonprofit operates on that, is like, what is the 5-year plan? Here we have this secured funding stream, and then AHC changes an initial to a P or whatever, and then we have to apply to a different grant. But we do whatever we take to piece it with federal and state money so that our services are still provided to the community. If you add mental health, substance use, Department of Health Services in that, they're going to more community-based services, and you also have the Medicaid billable aspect of that. And I can tell you, like, the mission of TLS, the mission of Credo, the mission of Snowbelt, I've seen them operate, even if it puts our staff at a detriment and we're working extra hours, that we're gonna provide that service that the community needs. Yeah, NERCO's been through the ringer with all kinds of new buildings.
Building, okay?
Yes.
And the county owns the lot. Has there been any communication that you are gonna be able to even get that lot from the county yet? Or
No,
is
that's
it gonna
what,
give it to you, or
so I think the,
So you kind of getting the cart before the horse here. to
no,
see if
this,
you can
this
even-
step we needed.
Oh, I see.
So we could have waited until after the land was transferred, I guess, to like open it up, but
Yeah,
like I
but
said, we've
you
been.
know if you get the grant.
Even after we do the or the detailed engineering study and secure that general contractor, we're still not gonna know if we have the grant. Everything in the agreements will be contingent based on the award. So say the county wrote a or contingency agreement for the land, in that contract, it would say, if there's no award, then there's no land transfer. So we couldn't just take the land and then make a water park, or it would have to be for that specific purpose with this specific funding in it. Is there anyone that we haven't?
If anybody from the
Sorry.
county has been made aware of the land purchase in which they were made
Oh.
aware long before those pictures were painted.
Like, oh, yes, yeah. So,
Is it possible, have you guys broached the option of expanding and making a larger facility?
not more than the 16 because of the operational funding, but I think, the ongoing operational funding, but, or 16 permanent, sorry, for transitional, I don't mean to cut Credo out of that. But this will show, is there an opportunity, should it be scattered site, what does the model look like? We know there's a core need for these apartments.
And are they age-based?
So half
Can
of them
somebody
will
70
be,
years old move in?
yes, yes. So I can name 5 off the top of my head in our senior adult with disability property that 100% would do better independently with the support. They're already in our buildings, and these are, a majority of those properties are local.
And I'm overlooking the room, and I think, is it true that there is a need for senior living in Lewis County? Is there a wait list at Brookside?
Yeah. And
Some people that maybe would want to leave independently, can't live in a full house?
So Brookside is extremely expensive too, and comes with the assisted living. So with Valley View, Steeple View, Whitten, High Falls, McNeil, those are all based on income, so there's a maximum income. So a lot of times we have to turn down people because their income is too much.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in Lewis County that didn't retire from the county system, which is a tax-funded operation.
Right.
Which is also the largest employer. Everybody's worried about tax dollars, but I'm pretty sure New York State is the largest employer in Lewis County. I mean, Lewis County's stuck in the early 2000s, so if there's any change that can be made, it could be positive.
Right. And I do think, like I said earlier, those populations overlap. So it is people that worked long-term, owned a home, had one spouse pass away. We've looked at it from a rehabilitation perspective, and we can't save their home. So they need to downsize and be somewhere safe. So that's when they move into our properties, because they don't have the income to save it, and they don't have the family around here to save it, because all their kids moved away. But the social support from our properties is also amazing, and we do the best we can with Office of Aging, NERCL. We try to bring the services on site as much as we can, but it's not 24 hours, and it's not assisted living, and it's not enough. It's not enough for that population. Sure.
What happens to, like, say if you have somebody that's on subsidized housing that does have mental health issues or problems, and they're in a big rental unit with no supports there and with other tenants who don't understand? What happens to them then if they don't have those supports that are in place?
I think it's unfortunate and it happens, but when you have a property that doesn't have the services offered on site with the wraparound, they get stuck in that, hey, we're going to communicate with their treatment providers, something's going on. But you can never make somebody go do something. So if the services were already there, they could de-escalate. They have people that they trust from every service level, and they're more apt to engage in those services and stay stable. There's also a different model. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but with it's not like a regular rental where it's like there's no exceptions in some of our properties with the rules. Like we have to move to evict. That's our answer when sometimes it's because that person's struggling and we could even know that, but we can't do anything about it.
So is it plausible to utilize private investors to fill the gap?
Yes. Like for this project, or, I mean,
Altogether.
So there's not going to be a gap in this project. If we get the award is going to be the question with this project, but there is a definite need for private investors. I think we're evaluating properties, figuring out how to package that and get it out to private investors, and then see which projects meet the county need according to the market analysis and what we're seeing on wait lists. And
because that brings out-of-state money into the county.
Yes.
I think a lot, just like she said, that most of us, especially me, I'm retired. I want to live in my house in Lowville as long as I can. And I think, and here I turn around and spending millions and millions up the hospital, expanding on, and they don't even have the help to run their, what they have now because my wife was in there. But anyway, they're running on DMV, they did their county home all over, just millions and millions of dollars spent. And then you come along with this for another $9 million piled on top of that. Apparently it's free money, which I never had got free money, but anyway. And I think that's why a lot of our, and especially uni.
Right.
I mean, I know this factor is gonna go up because it's gonna be mandated within a couple of years that the schools are gonna have to buy electric buses, which are $300,000 each. Of course, again, free money from state, I guess, but I mean, all this stuff is.
Yeah, it mixes together when you talk about especially huge price tags. In that the HHAP funding is on a rolling basis and it's according to like the 5-year budget. So this one's already secured, but it's always a question, like I said, with any nonprofit and grants, is it going to be renewed? So this one is a one-time grant. We can get it because it's designated. And there's no supportive housing like this in the county. And when we did the warming center, which is at Bethel Church, there was probably 14 of us, like, how do we do this better than sticking somebody at a hotel, disengaging them, not only for how can we do this better for the person, but how can we do this better because it makes no sense in any way to house them in a hotel without any supports or offering. Oh, geez. I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
Might just go to questions. Jeremy.
Could I just ask one question or status? We have the Ridgeview Hotel, which is up for sale. It has 60 rooms in it. It has kitchen, laundry, it has meeting rooms. Why can't we utilize that space? It will be expand, you can have providers there. It would complete the whole circle we've been talking about.
There's a couple reasons why that was taken off the list. For one, everyone's worried about their tax money. That is the only one out of these three eligible that will be taken off the tax roll. Glenfield is already tax exempt. The county land is already tax exempt. The other reason is it doesn't meet the scoring criteria of the grant. It is way too large for us to sustain. Every unit would need a full kitchen added on. So, and you're talking about a $2 million price tag to just purchase it.
Actually, it's 4.2. Yeah, but it's still cheaper than building that lot.
It's not if you have to renovate
You
it.
cannot expand this. What are you gonna have to renovate?
We would have to add a bedroom and a full kitchen onto every unit for it to meet the grant criteria.
So there's another alternative, kind of. There's a whole body of literature, companies from Texas to Maine, that are constructing little cottage houses.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't like this dormitory thing because I went to college. And I spent a lot of time in dormitories in college, and I know what happens. So why are we not investigating the possibility of really creative, cute little cottages? Plunk down half a dozen of those up on the hill. That relieves a little pressure for the people on Stowe Street. Take another 4, put them over by Miracle. Why isn't that being explored?
So it was. You want to talk about?
Yeah, so actually,
What's the problem?
this was one of the things that we talked about. If you think about homelessness in any community, it's not just you're homeless and then you're housed. There's varying levels of supports that people need to be able to, one, I just need to get off the street. So that's step one, you know.
These units
That
have
would be
bedroom,
the
kitchen, living room.
that would be the
and
warming
and
center.
bathroom.
So step one, the warming center. That gets them there. That gets them face to face with members of NERCL that like, here, these are some of the services that we have. Here, tomorrow, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go down to DSS. We're gonna do an application. I'm gonna connect you to TLS. I'm gonna connect you to care managers. And then here are the next levels of housing that we can get you in. And that's what this is. So if you think of it a ladder on getting someone from rock bottom, because that's where they're at. If they're at rock bottom, they're homeless. Well, what are some of the other things that we can do? And that's where this is so unique and exciting, is because what you said.
I don't see it exciting at all. I think it's a big.
So, well, maybe
it's a big monolithic looking structure.
So the
There's no
piece that's
privacy, by the
really
way.
good about this is that the services that are going to be provided there, when we say safety and security, it's not just here's a guy with a security badge walking
So
around.
if you have a
It's
cluster of 5 or
also
6 cottages, it's not any different than going to
so I'll get to the cottage thing because I think that's a great idea. So the other thing that's exciting
not
about
new.
this
I mean-
is that with the, I'll finish in a minute. So with
I mean,
this
I'm
you
not
have
looking for
the,
education in how your organization is run. You know, that's what I'm not here for. I'm just trying to find a way that it can tend to satisfy everybody in the community.
I agree.
Great.
Not everyone's the same. There's a solution that's different for everyone. And here's a solution that doesn't currently exist here. And when you have this right here with people that are face to face that they can talk to when they're struggling, they can say, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night without being able to go out and use, or I don't know what I'm going to be able to do.
It takes months to get in someplace and get help.
Exactly. All the more reason why we need to have another layer, or another opportunity for people to get
all
in.
of these people,
So,
and I have walked in
Yeah.
and gotten zero help.
yeah, well, I'm sorry for that. We would be more than happy to try to help you.
That was stellar.
Yeah.
If you cut these services off for these people, they are not going to make it.
I don't think I said anything about cutting any services off, but
But we
with
don't
this,
have the mental health care here that we need.
well,
we
this is
don't.
again another opportunity,
It's
face
not
to
an
face, for someone to have more services with a person, with a peer, with an advocate. They're going to be available there more often than they are right now out in the street, like they said, sleeping wherever in the community. And to your point, sir, about the small, tiny houses and stuff like that, that is actually, I think, another couple rungs up. And then once people are stabilized, they learn those independent living skills, they learn what it means to be a part of a community, learns to all those skills they need. Yeah, I think that should be the next level. So maybe that could be a future project. And I have interviewed some people that
The
have.
structure can be accommodated to exactly what you're talking about.
No, I think what Shane's point, I'm sorry, I cut you off too. I think it's too hot in here, that's why.
It's warm.
Pretty warm up here. The social benefits of having a group setting is insurmountable. Sometimes when people have substance use, mental illness, or even 18 to 24 without supports, they tend to isolate. They don't know how to function socially to everyone's norms. They don't interact on site. I mean, we have the same issues at all of our elderly sites. So we offer services on sites to teach them how to work together and depend on each other. And each site is now they depend on each other for support. They take each other to the grocery store. They wash each other's laundry. They divide up pie. But the benefits of that for those elderly people that do not have their children or family members around are insurmountable. If we put them on a hill where nobody has to interact with them, and then they don't have to interact with each other, what does that mean? Do they fall off the radar when they need additional support?
I don't understand why they'd be isolated any more than they would be in a structure of this type. Just because they don't.
And Ridgeview.
It doesn't meet the qualifications of the grant.
So you cut down the units and you make how many you need,
There's
make
too
it
many.
feasible to do that.
There's too many in Ridgeview,
Right, so you cut them down.
which would cost money.
Well, you're
To
still talking 4.5.
It would
That
cost-
still gives you that amount to 9 million to do that.
And removes the tax-paying property
Right,
from
and
the
4 million
property
plus
pool.
a
But if
rehab.
it sits there and he doesn't sell it and the taxes don't get paid on it, it's not doing us any good either.
Could we redirect for a moment to the woman's comment in the back of the room about access to health care? Because this is a real serious thing. The gentleman up here mentioned troubles at the hospital filling their positions. I have empty offices here in our facility in Lewis County that treats mental health. I know Credo has issues getting enough qualified people to provide licensed professional mental health treatment. And this is it's a workforce crisis. It's beyond our control. We were hit with COVID. More people left the workforce. More baby boomers have opted to go out of the workforce early or even just on time when they might have stayed in part-time. And the rise in telehealth. We have providers now that are working for companies out of state and sitting in their home offices calling people up on the phone or video chatting with them. Those are not services that are truly accessible to the people that really need them in our community. And this is something that has gotten we advocate all the time to folks at the state level for the funds to provide our services and for the other things that we need. And one of the things that we are really advocating for right now is that workforce support. Anybody here that works at an agency is feeling this right now. It's not from any lack of desire to serve the folks. It is clearly a capacity issue for us. And, if you've got some good ideas, we're open to hearing them because we've got the empty offices to put people in.
Most are educated people that are leaving Lewis County. People are moving out of Lewis County. There got to be a reason for this. The jobs are here. If you're a professional, like nursing or whatever, some of them jobs are going to be here and everything, and they're not staying. There's no way you can keep them here. I don't know how you keep them here. They're leaving.
She's got empty rooms for $30,000 a year. Somebody from Lewis County wants to go to college, they're not coming back. They're not gonna come back for $35,000 a year.
Oh, they're
They're not gonna come back for $45,000 a year.
I think you do good.
I mean, the biggest thing Lewis County has right now, you figure, is somebody that works in either a state, county, local, and that counts schools. Everybody amongst yourself ask you if you retired or currently work at a school, At a county job, at a town highway job, at a government job, you're all on a taxpayer's bill. You
I don't know, I
you
think
don't
the
turn a
dairy
profit.
industry is pretty big here. I think
Dairy-
we
dairy's
have-
huge.
Yeah,
We
so
beat
I
them
think
up
we
there.
have jobs. Don't even go there. We have
The dairy
jobs.
farmers.
Yeah, is thank you. I'm watching this donut up. So, I think I'm gonna do a last call, because we're right at 8 o'clock. Does anyone have a question that they haven't heard the theme or wanted to ask?
What about the children that you're taking care of? Where, they're not gonna go there.
No.
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 Or you gotta have different.
We have a different transition plan, and I could look that up, but I would say an average family that's placed at homeless, maybe you know it out of the top of your head, but I would say it's less than 30 days for a family.
About
to
2
place.
weeks if we have
It's
all
way
the-
easier to sell a family than a young adult or a single adult
I used to
into
run
a.
a foster home many years ago. We got kids there, we owned the farm. And they worked there for 2 days, and they told me that we were slaves, that they were slaves.
Oh, geez.
But we had two good ones too.
Yeah, and some stay around. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I actually, you guys said kids were very.
Oh, we're deteriorating?
No, I won't go into
In the
details, but
conversation.
families, kids are my area, so I think the question is.
What do we do with families that are homeless? So, families that are homeless in our county, we have, like Maureen was saying, we go to any available resource, but we typically house them within 30 days.
Where do they
Because
stay?
in the 30 days, they go to hotels.
So this will be my last question as a resident and concerned citizen of this one. In the orange, is that going to be Credo?
They did. In this model, yes, but they're gonna be.
But would Credo be facilitated in the same unit as the long-term housing?
Yes, all three, because they're the same
In that
population.
facility, at what stage would it be? Addicts that are currently prescribed drugs to continued usage, or the office?
That's an excellent point, because substance use history does not mean active use. They can be in any stage of recovery. And if anyone has ever worked in the field or done any training on addiction, it is a circle, and unfortunately there is relapse. So anyone can be at any stage of that addiction, and they 100% can be successful, independent, full-time workers. And I'm not just saying that because I feel like that happens. I have seen these stories of people's independence that if you read their social biography, you'd be like, no way they're going to be successful. And they went to school, they own a house. We had 2 young adults graduate this year with no family support. Both parents are in prison. They graduated, one's married, and they are stable, and they were never on DSS services.
I'll let you read mine.
That's an exception to the rule.
It is not. The rule that everyone can think of is the loudest, most detrimental, most disrespectful story that they can think of. Those you remember and they stick out, that is not a majority of our people, and I think I showed that with the characteristics. We've had 1 person incarcerated out of those 130 people in over a year. Like, mental illness, substance use, 18 to 24, homeless does not equal bad behavior. It does not equal unemployment.
Okay, we put our,
Sorry,
we put our contact information on there as far as our
Sure, yeah.
addresses. What's yours?
Mine?
Well,
Your what?
To contact if we have questions or whatever.
Is there any more
regardless,
cards left?
Like I said, we need a, okay, I didn't have, this is you?
Yes.
This is you?
Yes.
Yep, so that's my direct contact
Okay,
information.
great.
If anyone wants to stay for a couple of minutes and talk individually, I'm welcome to do that. I'm not gonna volunteer these guys because it's really hot out there. But I'm welcome to do that. You can reach out to me via email after. You can give me a phone call. We can talk individually as well.
You can Google us all.
We all have websites.
We all have websites, we all have contact information on websites. I put a few of my cards back there, and we welcome your input.
Oh, I do have more cards.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
At 8 o'clock, I'm here.